Thanks to everyone for tuning in today as we're having our first WatchBox virtual collectors conversation with three of our best guys. With me is Todd Cyril from Winnetka, Illinois, Mike Shanlickian from the Detroit, Michigan area, and Dave Terry, Western Canada's finest from Vancouver, Canada. Todd was the one who had this idea, and I'm glad he recommended it, as so much of the fun behind watch collecting is sharing in the passion with others. These three guys are my customers, but really they're my friends. And we've made some great memories together, whether it be hanging out in Chicago last fall or hitting the links at various golf courses. And we wouldn't have met each other if it wasn't for our mutual love of watches. So unfortunately, the coronavirus has taken away any opportunity for people to get together and have watch gatherings in person. So we figured it would be cool to connect and have some fun watch talk online. I'll get us started with our wrist checks today. I am wearing my 3710 from Patek Philippe. Older Nautilus, has a vintage look and feel to it, but contemporary case size, black Roman dial, state of winding indicator known as the Comet at 12 o'clock really fills out the dial. Love the watch, super comfortable. Definitely one I'll always be holding on to.
Thanks, George, for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this and to spend some time with my watch friends. I'm from Vancouver. I spend part of my time here, part of my time in Arizona, and I really enjoyed the hobby. I'm very passionate about my watch collection, and it's been great to meet so many friends along the way. I've been collecting watches for almost 15 years now, about 15 years, and it's been a really good hobby for me to kind of something to keep my mind busy, and I'm passionate about it. Today I'm wearing an FP Journe, the FP Journe Tokyo Turb. So this is one of 5 watches that was made for an anniversary for the Tokyo boutique, and the Tokyo boutique is very unique in the FP Journe stable of boutiques, because it's the first one that they had, and it's where they introduced a lot of their watches. So it's a titanium watch with a titanium tourbillon in there. It's a rose gold crown on it and bracelet. So it's kind of a different piece. Quite enjoy it.
How's it going, guys? I am Todd Cyril. Live outside of Chicago, as George mentioned. Really excited to be here today. Really excited that George and team actually wanted to take this on in the time of coronavirus. So I appreciate them taking a recommendation and wanting to have a collector's conversation. I love having these collector's conversations. Like Dave said, I love getting to talk to other collectors. And I really love getting to talk to collectors about why their collection is special to them, what's creative about it. And I love seeing sort of the genius behind pulling a collection together. I was lucky enough over the last year to actually interview Max Busser of MB&F and Kari Voutilainen. Had a great time talking to both of those guys. One of the things I enjoy most about watches and collecting is actually getting to talk to watchmakers, which is why I really love independent brands. And to show that love today, aside from wearing a nautical themed sweater, also wearing a nautical themed watch in the form of the MB&F HM7, the titanium aquapod, one of 33 made, has a tourbillon. Everything is covered in lume. It's an incredible watch. Love talking about it, and would be happy to share more about it going forward.
All right, well, greetings, everybody. My name is Mike Shanlickian. I'm very excited to be here today with you, and I thank George Mayer for inviting me to this event. Like George said, I'm from the southeast Detroit, Michigan area. I have a passion for traveling and watches, and I've been collecting watches for over 20 years now. Many different types of watches, but a very heavy focus on the independents. For the most part, I like to combine my two passions of traveling and watches, and I like to plan visits to actually visit watchmakers or watch companies, tour their facilities, get to know them, get to know the process, and actually participate in designing or the watchmaking process. So it's very exciting for me. What I want to share with you today, I'm actually double wristed, couldn't make up my mind today. So on my left wrist, I have here a Roger Smith Series 2. It's a 40 millimeter rose gold case Roger Smith that I custom designed with Roger back in probably back in 2013, and I had the wonderful experience of flying over to the Isle of Man and picking it up and visiting with him and touring his workshop. So one of the great one of the great aspects of working with an independent brand. And of course, I also have with me, and I'm very passionate about FP Journe. So today I have with me my 38 millimeter platinum resonance with a yellow gold dial. Also a very special watch. It's a watch that FP Journe launched in 2000. Actually, it's a 20-year anniversary of the resonance, and he's soon to be releasing a new model. So we're all very excited about that. But I look forward to chatting with everybody today.
First of all, I got to say that Mike is a cheater. You know, to double wrist it like that, that's just not fair.
That's right. I know. I would have told you to double wrist, Dave. Maybe.
You came in strong last time, Dave. So I said I'm not gonna get outdone this time.
I love it. Came in with the secret double wrist.
I'm double wristing with the cheap shot of the Apple Watch on the so
I don't think the viewers of this kind of combo will appreciate that one, Todd. But maybe
maybe if it's a one-off, platinum cased Apple Watch.
Yeah, you need the gold one. You need the gold one, the $10,000 one.
Rose gold version. Okay,
so you guys are all very experienced collectors who have bought, sold, and traded many watches for years. What watch or watches would you advise people that are just getting started with collecting to consider? And what watches do you see as essential for a quality collection?
So I think what's most important is, you have to have an emotional connection with your watch, or really with anything that you're going to collect. Because if not, it's going to be exciting for a period of time, and then you're going to move on to the next thing. So I would say find a watch that you're really going to connect with, that you're really going to enjoy wearing, not something that you're just going to leave in a safe, but something that you can kind of experience life with. I mean, that one of the cool things about watches are, they go with you everywhere. Everywhere you go, they go. They experience everything that you experience. It's much different than any other type of collectible item, whether it's a car, whether it's a painting, art. A watch is it's there with you at all times. It's just a matter of whether you form that emotional connection to it. So I would start by focusing on that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. I mean, watches definitely, they age with you, which is a very cool aspect of them.
I agree with Mike. I think that it's important to find a watch that you like and that you've kind of researched a little bit, because generally the first time a person buys a luxury watch, it's probably the biggest purchase that they've made in that area before. And I think it's important that they buy a watch that they really like. I think that there's a lot of people these days that get on internet forums and do research that way, and then they find out that there's money to be made, or that this is the watch that everybody says you should have, and so they chase somebody else's watch or somebody else's passion rather than chasing something that is really cool to them. And I think it's important to find something that means, that ticks the boxes for you, and then you can wear that watch, and then you can have it become something that means something special to you and not to other people. I think that watch collecting is about kind of doing what you think is cool, and not what the herd is doing, so to speak.
Yeah, it's true. I see so many people change what they would have purchased just because of what others say, and we'll touch on that a little more later, but yeah, it has to speak to you. I mean, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think it has to speak to you. I think you have to really look at every watch brand that's out there. I think you've got to survey the field and figure out what resonates with you. You don't really know what works for you until you look at everything on the market. So George, I think when you and I talked about this in the last collector conversation, I said, you really have to see it in the metal. You have to get out there, you have to go to a boutique, you have to go to different stores, talk to other collectors, and actually see the watch in the metal, because it's one thing to see it in pictures on the internet, and it's quite another thing to put it on your wrist. And to Mike's point, like when you put it on your wrist, you're going to feel that emotional connection or you're not. And you're going to look at it and go, wow, this is awesome, and not want to take it off. And you're going to know exactly like what that watch is. So I think it's so hard to tell somebody what the first watch that they should get is, or what they should be looking at, because it's such a personal journey. And the one thing I always think about that I wish somebody had told me was, be okay when you're buying your first watch that you may look at it in 5 years and laugh, thinking about what was I doing, or it may be something you need to be comfortable letting go of, and it may not make sense in your collection in 1 year, 2 years, 10 years time. But you just kind of got to write it up to experience and keep learning from those different watches, and every new sort of purchase or every new watch that comes into the collection is a learning experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, with today's market, it's sometimes difficult to be able to try on the exact watch you want, because a watch might be difficult to get, and there's no way to ever have a chance to try it on. So sometimes you might have to try on something that's similar, because you can't try on the exact watch. And then, there might be an occasion where, Dave and our mutual friend, they've coined the phrase, the catch and release. I mean, you might have to sometimes, if you get a watch, and you're like, oh man, I was expecting it to wear different or be different, that's when, you realize, hopefully you can return it to wherever you purchased it from, but you might have to, trade it or sell it. But I've always loved that phrase, the catch and release.
I think we've all done it too. I see Mike smirking, I see Dave smirking. We've all done it, where you get really excited about something. You call up George or you call up somebody else and you get the watch, slap it on your wrist right then and there, and then you're like, oh, cool, I'm done. Like, didn't really need this thing, and you kind of just move on. And I think that's part of the experience. That's half the like fun of being a collector, and the fact that all of us have had a catch and release. It's something we can all laugh about, and I'm pretty sure all of us remember exactly what that watch was.
Or there's been more than one, Todd, for sure.
So how would you guys say your tastes have evolved over the years? Was there a watch that you purchased which was a turning point in your collecting?
For me, George, I've gone through the natural watch collecting progression. Where I started with, actually my first watch that I purchased out of college was a Tag Heuer, a 36 millimeter chronograph with the brushed stainless steel bracelet, which I still own to this date. But from there, I progressed into Rolex, and then from Rolex into Patek Philippe. And then after Patek Philippe, I went into Audemars, Vacheron. And for me, I would say the turning point in my collecting was when I was first introduced to FPS Journe watches. I became enamored with FPS Journe watches when I first saw them. And I'd say in 2005 is when I got my first Journe. It was actually a Resonance, not this particular one that I have on, but a 2005 Resonance. And then from there, that's when I really got into independent watchmaking. That's when I started to learn about Roger Smith, Carrie Boutellini, Philippe Dufour, Roman Gautier, list goes on and on.
Dave, what about you?
The first, I guess, luxury watch that I acquired was a Breitling, and that was a 44 millimeter, mechanical movement watch. It was a big watch, shiny, kind of a lot of flash and that going on. And I wore that watch for, several years. And I got to a certain milestone in my life, and I decided that, I'd always really wanted to get a Rolex. And I remember looking at them online, and, there's all these different reference numbers and the prices were all over the place, and I really couldn't figure it all out. So I decided that I got to this milestone and I wanted to buy a Rolex. So I wanted to buy a Submariner, and they were available at that point in time, unlike today. Went in there and I ended up buying it, and at the same time, I bought a date just as well. So I had two when I walked out of the store, and I started wearing those, and I really enjoyed wearing those. And you know, they're bracelet watches, and they're great. And then you know, it just kind of evolved from there, where, you know, I took a chance and I bought an AP, and then, you know, Panerai and other stuff like that. And, you know, it just kind of evolved. And then one of the brands that I really got interested in was Patek Philippe, and started collecting those. And I've enjoyed collecting those watches. And then while on a factory trip to visit the factory in Geneva, for Patek, I had the opportunity to visit the FP Journe boutique when we were over there, and was introduced to the brand. And that seems to be where I spend most of my time now in my collection, is with the FP Journe brand. That's where most of my watches and most of my my collecting time is spent at this point in time. And I just, you know, really enjoy the uniqueness of them, how many different variations there are, how few watches are manufactured each year, and yet how many different models they have is crazy in my mind.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has, you know, an experience with Rolex. I mean, it's hard not to. They're just such a good value. They're so, I mean, for what they are, they're versatile watches. They're wearable watches, you know, as Danny likes to call them. They're beach to tux watches. And I think you then, you know, that seems to be like the standard progression or path that people take, and then people sort of then branch off and have their own road in which they travel, and then, you know, everyone ends up at a different spot. And you know, I think you guys, it's interesting, you know, all three of you, you know, amongst other things, but certainly have ended up with FP Journe. I've seen that a lot. I mean, you know, you can make an argument they're as good as it gets. But yeah, it's different. It's funny, you know, hearing how everyone gets to where they end up, and you're always constantly evolving too. So what about you, Todd?
Yeah, it's a constant theme of evolution. And I mean, I think that's one of the fun things to talk to collectors about, is like, okay, where did you start? How did you get here? And Mike, it's funny that you mentioned the first date of your first Journe, because I think that's something that's pretty much imprinted on everyone's mind who at least collects Journe. So, you know, I started as a kid. I fell in love with swatches, and it just kind of went from there. You know, I remember being in love with this tag. It was, again, a diving watch. I don't remember, no idea what the reference number is, but it had a yellow rubber strap, and it just blew my mind. I was so used to seeing sort of like Timexes and watches with black straps, and the fact that something had a bright yellow strap on it was like, what? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And that was sort of a defining moment for me in getting into watches. And then from there, it's just, again, been the constant evolution. I looked at everything in the field. I've done, you know, Rolex, APs, Panerai, Patek, and then ended up sort of in this world of independent watchmakers. And the thing that's so cool to me about the independent watchmakers is it's such a different level of craftsmanship and then connectivity to the community. And the fact that you could write an independent watchmaker and get a response from them or someone who's 1 degree removed from them. I think that's absolutely the coolest thing. And the turning point for me was actually getting my Journe Quantième Perpetuel. That watch really just sort of turned the corner for me on independent watchmaking. When I got that watch, George, you remember this, it was absolutely just like an amazing moment. We'd waited 2 years to see the watch. Yep. I hadn't even seen the watch in the metal when I got it. We opened the box, and it was just like the coolest unboxing experience. And for me, that was like, this is it. Like this, how do you beat this? Where do you go from here? And the answer for that for me has been in independent watchmaking. But you can't ignore the Pateks and the Rolexes of the world. And if I was going to recommend, one watch to somebody who's just getting started, it's always going to be the Rolex GMT. For me, that watch is just a special watch.
Right. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that. I mean, people could, if I'm thinking through my head, like what are like 10 staples, and that would be, certainly one of them, having that. It's just such a useful complication, and they make so many different variations. You could have your own personal variation of the GMT. So for my next question, all three of you guys are part of what's called the Journe Society, and there are regular gatherings. You meet and consult with various collectors regularly. Todd, I know you sometimes collaborate with your dad, who also collects a little bit. How much do you value what others have to say when determining what decisions to make concerning your collection? And do you sometimes seek the advice of others before making a decision?
For me, I do. I like talking through my ideas and what I like versus what I don't like with others. It's good to get other people's perspective. Now, for the most part, I would tell you that I'm OCD. So once I have my mind made up on something, I go after it, and rarely does anyone influence me. However, I'll give you an example where I had a good friend, collector of mine, who asked me what I thought of. We were actually at a Journe event, and he asked me what I thought of the chrono, the old chronograph that Journe had. And at that particular time, I wasn't very crazy about it. I wasn't that crazy about the design. And told him I didn't have one, and it wasn't really a priority for me. And then he said, well, you should really take a look at it. And of course I did. And, I fell in love with the watch, and I ended up buying the ruthenium chrono, which I rotate into my weekly wear. So, talking through things with people can tend to influence you.
Yeah, I think it's a healthy balance, right? I mean, sometimes I see people not get something that they're set on because they listen to people, but then the other times by, collaborating with others and taking their advice, they make a decision that they're happy with. So I think it's, you still want to make sure you realize that, what somebody else likes doesn't necessarily, that might not be what you like. So it's really, forums I think are very misleading because you don't know who the people are, and they're posting something, just out of the blue. People that know who you are, what you like, what you have would be, better people to consult with, obviously, because they understand you better, they know what you have, and they'll be better able to advise than somebody who's sitting behind a keyboard that you don't know and has no idea, what your real interests are and passions are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that collaboration and talking to other people through a collection or what you're thinking about is really important. And I think that's one of the key ways that you actually learn about new watches that are out there in the world, or you learn about something that you didn't know about, or why something is special. And for me, as I've gone into the world of independent watchmaking, I've been focusing on keeping the collection, smaller and tighter. And so it's fun for me to bounce ideas off of other people. And I'm pretty sure that Dave is sick of getting text messages from me about what he thinks about something, because I bounce a lot of ideas off of other collectors and just think about, hey, how does this fit within the greater collection? And George, you and I bounce this around a lot. I've got, there's always stuff that you're interested in looking at and learning more about, but it's, for me, it's helpful to have the thoughts of others as I look at, how it fits into the overall collection and whether or not you're actually going to wear the thing.
It's true. I mean, there's such thing as like an amazing watch that doesn't work for you, right? I mean, a watch has to fit your wrist properly. Certain sizes might just, there's tons. I mean, I have a smaller wrist, and really above 42, I can't really pull off. Although, like a Journe sports watch that's 44, it wears a little smaller, but then you have like an AP offshore at 42, which is just way too big for my wrist. So there is such thing as loving a watch, but not having it in your collection because, it's not something you can wear. And obviously, these watches are meant to be worn. What do you think, DT?
Well, I think the Journe Society is a unique group of people. There's a lot of A-type personalities there, and everybody has their own opinion, so there's no lack of opinion there. When you take a look at some of the internet forums and things like that, I got to be honest, it's a mess out there, and people, I'm not sure that you know, I want to follow the herd, so to speak. But when I talk to other FP Journe collectors at the society, I know that these guys are passionate about the brand. They're passionate about their watches in general, and they're passionate about the industry. And what I find is that with the uniqueness of everything that that Journe has, that I can talk about a watch, and you know, we can find things out that you can't find out about other brands. You know, there's retailers, you know, like yourself, George, that are out there. Specifically you guys, because you guys are great. You have, you know, you're in a spot so that you have the new watches available, but you also have the pre-owned watches, and you guys know a lot of the collectors out there, so you come across some very interesting and cool pieces. Then there's the collectors that are out there that can help us, but then also with the brand, you know, Pierre is out there, Pierre Halemi, who is, you know, the brand in North America. He's business partners with FP, and you know, I can call him up and I can ask him, hey, I'm looking at this particular piece, and they can, you know, they're so good at FP Journe that they can tell you how many of those watches were made and how many versions of it are out there. They can tell you the last time the watch was serviced. They can give you the history on the watch. They can make sure if the watch has been stolen or not, or if it's been reported as stolen. And you know, there's some comfort that comes around buying a pre-owned watch, you know, because you have that security of that. Then when you talk to the other collectors out there of the brand, you know, to Mike's point about the chronograph, is you see different insights, and you can gain a greater appreciation for the uniqueness of the different models and iterations that are out there. And it's not like I'm going to listen and follow what those guys are necessarily saying, but it's part of the, you know, the collection of data that's going to help you form your own opinion so that you can decide what you want to do.
Yeah, well said. You know, and then once you also learn, you know, become more friendly with the guys, and they know you better, they have a better idea on how to advise you, you know, because everyone's different, you know, their tastes are different, their risks are different. So the big news yesterday that was announced was that Patek, Rolex, Tudor, and Chopard are all out of Baselworld. You know, the end of an era. I've been fortunate to go for many years now, and when I first started going, I mean, it was a true spectacle. I mean, you walk into the main hall and you just feel the energy. It was just such an incredible event. You know, annual event every year around in March. But now the big dogs, you know, Patek and Rolex are transitioning to Watches and Wonders in Geneva starting in April 2020. It'll be interesting. You know, people have asked me, are they really not going to come out with any new watches until, you know, a year from now? That'll be interesting to see. And it leads to my question. Do you like the idea of one big fair where all the brands come out with their new stuff just at one go, and it's like everyone's talking and all the energy and focus is there? Or do you like when brands come out with their new releases regularly throughout the year? You know, like an AP just came out with a new limited edition of 500 pieces, and they did they came out with the titanium Royal Oak Perpetual for the Chinese market in January. And it seems like they're going to do just regular new releases throughout the year, whether it be online or through different events. What do you guys prefer?
You know, for me, George, my preference is the smaller events and the smaller releases. I think they're more intimate. I think it gives you a better opportunity to spend time with the brand, asking questions, allows you more time, you know, to be with the watch. You know, like you said, Basel was typically a big spectacle, right? A lot of energy, but a lot of people, and maybe not as intimate and as close as you'd like to be. So for me, I think that's probably you know, a better use of your time and travel. And not to knock Basel. I mean, Basel was always a fun event, but you know, going forward, I think the smaller events, you know, I prefer.
Right. I know you and Dave were planning on going over to Geneva for the launch of the Resonance. I know that was going to be a really cool event. It's a shame that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
Todd, what do you think? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, man, I'm all about actually having smaller releases throughout the year. I would rather see releases scattered across the year. and be surprised by something when it comes out rather than sort of wait in anticipation for one particular day. I'm super excited to see new watches, see new releases. So I think having them kind of not follow any particular schedule and just go as the manufacturer is ready to launch them. Just go as the brand is ready to go to market with each watch. I think that's half the fun, and half the fun for me is being surprised. We've watched what's happened over the last 2 months with user conferences for a lot of software companies, and they've been able to pivot to sort of digital releases. And I think there's an interesting idea here where the watch world could really step up and go to these, digital keynotes and releases where you could actually maybe use that to capture some data and really capture, names and emails for people, and capture that as sales leads for your boutiques, and then be able to drive traffic to your boutiques by reaching out to people after a release and saying, hey, thank you for coming to the live launch event. We noticed you're in, the US. Please stop at one of our boutiques in, New York, Chicago, wherever you happen to be, and check out that watch. So I think there's maybe an interesting opportunity here for them to, one, capture more leads, but two, to also reach a broader audience. At this time especially, I think it's something to look forward to and something to hope for. And that's great stuff when you see people who are creating these watches. When you're seeing watchmakers actually release new product, it's always really exciting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Rolex and Patek do. I mean, they've been so committed to Basel for so many years. I think I saw yesterday Rolex had been going since 1930 or something, like 1939 or something like that, which is crazy when you think about it. And Patek came out, did the Ladies 24 launch at the end of last year. So they, dipped their feet into the idea of coming out with things at different times. But, it'll be interesting to see if now, given the fact that neither brand, is coming out with anything this year, do they then change that? Do they come out with something at the end of the year to get people, excited? Hopefully we'll be in a better place, with regards to coronavirus at that point. Or do they just hold it back and wait until next year and do a big bash? I mean, they will have had 2 years to prepare. I was expecting big things from both the powerhouses this year. So imagine what they would be doing come next April. That would be crazy. What do you think, Western Canada's finest?
Well, first of all, I've never been to a Basel or an SIHH, so I've never experienced that firsthand. I can tell you that whenever it does occur, I'm looking at social media to see what's been introduced, and I generally can quickly identify a couple of pieces that I like, and I'm usually texting, a good friend of mine that's over there at Basel saying, hey, George, I need this Patek or I need this Patek. Put me on the list. What do I have to do to get that? I think you and I have had those dialogues for the last several years, and it's, I know it's historical and it's what's always been done. But what you'll find is that the watches are introduced, but then the lag time between Basel and when the watches are actually available to the collector, there's such a lag. And I think that the brands would do themselves well in this new world, so to speak, where they would be able to introduce a piece and be able to start putting that into the collector's hands a little bit more succinctly with the introduction date. I think that makes sense for them and it would help them with the collectors long term. To be honest with you, I think that the lag time is, it is what it is, but it's kind of annoying, to be honest with you.
Right, your interest wears off by the time you can actually, buy the watch. There could be a production delay, or in the production cycle, it just doesn't align with the event. So I think a lot of consumers would prefer to be able to buy the watch, immediately thereafter. One thing I definitely will not miss this year is looking down at that allocation list and seeing, 2 pieces and having 30 good customers reach out to me, requesting the watch. I won't. I will definitely be happy that I don't have to tell good people I can't help them out in that regard. So. Save that for next year.
Yeah, but if you look at the 5172, for example, I mean, that's only started to really be released in 2020, as opposed to anywhere in 2019. There was a few, I guess, that trickled out in 19, but not very many. You know, that's a long lag after introduction, to be honest with you. If they're not ready to introduce the watch, they shouldn't present it at Basel, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that on that watch too, it's the same movement that was in the predecessor. I was surprised by that. Who knows? Maybe it was a dial issue, case issue. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that there was a lag there.